Welcome to What the Health? Where anything health is fair game as we tackle the trends and bust the myths about health and wellness. Here are your hosts, Dr. Dan and Angela Toro.
And welcome to another episode of What the Health podcast. I am Dr. Dan here with my co-host,
Angela Turo with Turo Family Chiropractic. We got another good topic here today. This is one we really like talking about, I know. So what's the topic today here?
Oh, we are going to be discussing how to not be a hospitable host.
Not be a hospitable host. Seems to go against what we were raised to do, right?
I know, right? Everyone thinks, how can we be the best host possible? But we, in regards to your health, are going to be talking about how not to become a hospitable host. But before we do that,
got to do our quick disclaimer. Everything we talk about here is for informational purposes only. Please always talk about any specific individualized healthcare changes with your trusted healthcare provider. So, with that being said, why don't we want to be a hospitable host?
So this really gets to the heart of germ theory versus terrain theory. A lot of people, everyone's heard of germ theory because we grew up in biology class learning about germ theory. And it wasn't really until I got to chiropractic school and started looking at, all methods of healing, not just our, medical monopoly that we have here in the Western civilization, of something called the terrain theory, and that really gets to the heart of what we're discussing today about being the hospitable host. But before we get into that, let's do just a quick quote. This is actually from Dr. B.J. Palmer. He is known as the developer of chiropractic. He was the son of the founder, D.D. Palmer, but he had a ton. He wrote a ton of books. I don't even know how many books he wrote. It was, definitely in the 60s, I believe. But, he wrote a ton of information, but he had what were called epigrams and just these short little, quotes that just kind of got to the heart of some sort of major principle or idea. So he wrote this probably, again, back in he passed in the 1960s. So, I mean, he probably wrote this, back in the 1930s or 40s, but he has this epigram that gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. If the germ theory of disease were correct, there'd be no one living to believe it. And so what does he mean by that? Yeah, so what does he mean by that? If germs truly cause disease and truly lead to ill health, there'd be too many germs on this earth that we would all be taken over and be dead, right? I mean,
because the germ theory is essentially
germs cause illness.
Yes, you get infected by a germ. Makes you sick.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's very interesting that we're talking about 2 years after the 2020 pandemic started. There was just a lot of targeting of this germ theory in terms of this still in 2020 and now this century, it's still the mainstream understanding that we were so terrified of a new virus, right, a novel virus, that we didn't we wanted to attack it, right? We wanted to do everything we could to prevent from being exposed to it. And, if God forbid we were exposed to it, which we knew we were all going to be, then we wanted to do everything we could to attack that virus from an outside-in approach. So but we have to look at what happened over the past 2 years. Again, obviously, when we first started down this track, we didn't know how it was going to hit us. So certainly there were precautions put in place to start to see, how was the population going to handle this. But what we understand 2 years later now, with the coronavirus pandemic, is that there were people who were exposed that had very mild or no illness whatsoever. And there was obviously a huge range of how people responded to the exposure of the same virus, right? So that gets to the heart of, if germ theory were true, well, any virus that got into our system and started spreading deep enough, it would take us all out. but there was such a range of differences and reactions to the virus that there's something else in play.
And this applies to any virus or bacteria. I mean, think about the common cold that we deal with every year. I mean, I'm sure you know, if you live in a family, sometimes everyone gets it. Sometimes one person gets it. No one gets it. I mean, I remember I was living with roommates one year, and the one guy got the flu and really, really bad case of it, and the other two of us never got sick.
Didn't touch it.
And again, you were
living in close quarantine.
Shared space. I mean, it's, he tried to kind of stay in his room as much as possible, but
there was no way you were not exposed.
Exactly, using the same bathroom, using the same kitchen.
Correct.
Like, I mean, it's so this has been going on forever. This is, any virus, any bacteria. There's some reason that people respond differently.
Yeah, so there's something called the biome or the virome too. So it's how our bodies interact harmoniously with the bacteria and viruses that are in our environment. So I think it gets to the heart. And one other way to look at that, the germ theory of disease is, let's look at a garbage pile, outside, or maybe your trash lid in the summer is left off, and so now you have all of these flies that are going around this garbage can. Did the flies cause the garbage, the illness, or did the illness, the garbage, attract the flies? And so that's the idea of the terrain theory. The soil, is it the soil that helps produce the seed and grow the seed, or is it the seed that produces healthy soil?
So the flies were attracted to that environment.
Correct, the toxicity of the environment. And so medicine, medicine really looks at the germ as the cause of illnesses. And so they want to, give an antibiotic. They want to give an antiviral medication. They want to give a vaccine to be able to, stimulate your body to artificially help you protect against a viral or bacterial invasion. But terrain theory looks more at the host, the body, as the source of whether or not our body is in a healthy state or a state that is susceptible to attracting, those bacteria and viruses. Another example I'll give you, we had a piece of fruit last year that started to turn in our fruit bowl.
Oh, I remember that.
I know, it was just so freaking annoying. And again, one piece of bad fruit, and we all of a sudden we have these fruit flies, and these little fruit flies were flying around our kitchen. And again, we took the time to target the fruit flies and try and get them, out of the way, because obviously once a couple show up and they start breeding, then they find every little piece of fruit or every little piece of food to be able to reproduce. And again, sometimes it's very hard to get under control. But if we never removed the reason they showed up in the first place was the bad fruit, then we never would have gotten rid of them, right? So, we were able to correct, once we corrected the terrain and got rid of the bad, unhealthy fruit that they were attracted to, and then, slowly used methods to eliminate them, we were able to we were able to eliminate the infestation, right? The infection per se.
Yeah.
So again, at the end of the day, it's a combination. Certainly germs, they will replicate, and sometimes they replicate out of control to the point of, your body does become very sick. But the point being, if your body is weak, if you have weak, damaged tissue, you have the toxic environment that germs are attracted to in the first place, and then they feed off of that weak, damaged tissue in the body that allows them the environment to replicate very quickly. So that's the idea of being the hospitable host or not being the hospitable host of what we're trying to get to the root of today.
So basically having a very unhealthy, toxic environment is what makes you hospitable to these different viruses and bacteria that we're exposed to all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to like you said, we have, there's such a range of individuals who, some people seem to get sick all the time, right? It's like, it's like every other month, they come down with something and they're sick for a couple weeks, and then they're back to it. So, it's not that they're getting exposed to any different, unique viruses or germs that other people are getting exposed to. It's the fact that there's something inherently weaker in their system that is leading to the chronic reinfection and infection of their system.
Yeah. So what is that?
So
that's what everyone's asking. Like,
so what is it? What is it? So how do we? Well, and again, I think the heart of it, becomes, so how do we not become a hospitable host to these invaders, these germs, these viruses and bacteria, comes down to how do we make the strongest healthy soil so that they're not attracted to the toxic breakdown or the garbage dump that sometimes our bodies become. And really it breaks down to, we're going to go to the 30,000 foot view, the 3 dimensions of stress that we talk about all the time. Some people call it a health triad, the triangle. It's like there's 3 dimensions of stress. Stress is at the core of weakness, right, in the system. And really, stress always attacks the weakest area of the body. So it comes down to how do we strengthen and create good, healthy, fertile soil so that we are not, overrun by these viruses and bacteria. And so what are these 3 dimensions of stress that we talk about all the time in our office and when we're working with patients?
That's what we have: the physical, the mental, emotional, and then the biochemical.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So it really comes down to, any one of those 3 stresses, if you're overrun. Now, all of those stresses are natural to life, right? Yeah. You cannot outrun stress. You can't hide away in a bubble.
Nor should you. Life would be very boring without.
Yes, we're designed to, and in fact, that's actually how our body gets stronger as we are exposed to stresses.
So exercise, perfect example.
Perfect.
Exercise is a perfect example of physical stress. It's a stressor on the body. It truly breaks down muscle. But then that is how the muscle regrows and gets stronger, comes back stronger. You get faster, you get stronger. So without that stressor, you're not going to adapt and get stronger.
Correct.
So that is the idea. I mean, everyone's felt this, if you've gone through kind of a training program, you have to have a progression. You have to increase it because eventually you're going to get to the point that the weight you were lifting before now is easy. It's not challenging you anymore. So you have to up that weight, or you have to up the distance or the duration. There's something that you have to increase that stress to adapt and grow further. So that's a perfect example of you want to exercise. You don't want to avoid exercise. Exercise is very important, but it is a stressor. It is a stressor on the body. So that's what we're talking about as far as stress can't be avoided. It's good. It helps you adapt. It helps you grow. Yeah. Same with mental, emotional. I mean, we absolutely can't avoid
mental, emotional stressors. Yeah, and it's the ability to be exposed and experienced to a mental, emotional stress, which we all will be, through finances throughout our life, through relationships throughout our life. We are constantly exposed to these mental, emotional stressors, and the ability to be exposed, you build a mental toughness, right? A mental resilience and an emotional toughness. And that doesn't mean you're going to put up a shell. That's an unhealthy response, right? That's an unhealthy mental, emotional response. When you get exposed to a trauma and you don't overcome it in a healthy way. And so now you do have this shell. And so now when you're exposed to future, relationships, that shell is now impacting your ability to relate, to other people, both professionally and intimately. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that, we recognize that these stressors are in our life, and we want to be able to create the best healthy environment, because by doing that, by creating a strong, healthy system, then we will be able to successfully encounter, adapt, and overcome all of these stressors. And that is how you avoid, getting impacted and overrun by other, other living entities, viruses and bacteria. Even though viruses aren't actually alive, but viruses and bacteria will not overrun your system because you're in a strong state. So you become hospitable. You don't become hospitable to basically let them come in and overrun your system. Yep. Is basically what we're getting at. So the final one is the biochemical, the chemical stressors. And so again, we all get exposed to those toxins, whether it's through the air that we breathe, the food that we eat. Now, again, Angela just used the example of you're exposed to a physical stress like exercise, and that's how the body breaks down muscle and gets stronger. We don't necessarily want to look at biochemical stressors, and it's like, okay, I'm going to expose myself to, to smoking. I'm going to expose myself to, eating, excesses amounts of sugar, and we talked about this in a previous episode, but it's like, those things in and of themselves are not bad for you. It's the inundation of it, right? Yes. It's the toxic buildup. Someone who, smokes a pipe once a month is not the same, experience as someone who is smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. Mm-hmm. There's a difference in toxic overload. That's one of the things that they talk about in medicine, right? There's there's the dose-response relationship. Dose-response relationship in medicine basically talks about, we want the smallest dose that we can to get the response that we're looking for. The more, if we get to a point of toxic overload in the system, now our body starts to become weak because it starts to become overrun. So from a chemical perspective, we see people who are on, medications, whether it's prescribed or over the counter, people who are exposed to toxic overload through the sugars that they eat, fatty foods, just artificial ingredients in the food, the quality that they eat. All of those impact your body's ability to regulate and develop and be healthy, right? Because our body's constantly breaking down and replacing new healthy cells. At least it should be. That's in a healthy environment. Yes. If the body starts getting attacked through these chemical, physical, mental, emotional stressors, God bless you. Sorry,
I was trying to hold it.
Chemical stress. If your body starts getting attacked and doesn't have the appropriate amount of time to recover and build up new healthy cells, or it doesn't have the ingredients because you're constantly putting toxic things in the system, then again, the tissue starts to break down, and maybe new tissue is being replaced, but it's weaker tissue. It's the dead tissue stays around longer because it hasn't been appropriately cleaned up. So now you go back to this, the idea of the garbage and the flies. Now you start to have these, this garbage environment, this toxic environment build up. And whether that's the breakdown with exercise, right? Because you can exercise, and if you have poor quality ingredients going into your system, now the breakdown of that tissue is not necessarily going to be replaced. So now you just have people who have trigger points in their muscles, chronic trigger points. Trigger points are kind of a normal phenomenon when you're working out, but the body should be able to overcome them. Mm-hmm. But if you have a toxic environment, and the tissue is not, flexing and relaxing appropriately, then you start to get these chronic, small areas of swelling in the tissue that start to build up. And now, you open up the door for invaders, that again are usually normally a part of our normal environment, right? They're, all these bacteria, you've got, hundreds of thousands of different bacteria and viral species all around,
in your mouth, in your gut, everywhere.
Yeah. So again, are they in harmony and helping you live out a healthy life, or does your body start to get weak, and so now the invaders start to flourish because now you are becoming a hospitable host. You are welcoming in the viruses, the bacteria, and ultimately, if you really think about it, it's a normal response. If you have, let's say garbage, okay. Flies coming to eat that garbage, that's a normal environmental
that's what they're meant to do.
Ecosystem. Ecosystem. They're coming to eat up the garbage. And that's a lot of what viruses and bacteria do in our body, right? Even in our digestive system, in our colon, on our flesh, inside our mouth, they're designed to help us break down. The problem is when we start to become toxic and there's too much of a buildup, they naturally they have to respond by growing their numbers because they're trying to eat up a bigger toxin, right? So that's becoming the hospitable host. The more toxic your body becomes, the weaker it becomes because you're not allowing it time to overcome these 3 dimensions of stress: physical, chemical, mental, emotional. Well, now it becomes weaker, and so now the numbers of the bacteria and viruses start to grow. And again, they grow big enough. Well, now, you start to look at things under a microscope and you say, well, you've got this, E. coli infection, or you've got this staphylococcus infection, or so.
Well, and on the other side of that, so we have the invaders that we don't have control necessarily over exposure. We're exposed to this stuff all the time. But then, again, we have our immune system that is designed to identify the good versus the bad bacteria, because we're filled with good bacteria, healthy bacteria. We need it. But we have that immune system that is there to identify the invaders, the potentially harmful invaders. And that, if you listen to our inflammation episode, we talk about inflammation and how that's the kind of the first line of defense with the immune system. So we have this immune system that is designed to identify and attack those foreign invaders that are potentially harmful. So same thing when we're talking about this overload of stress and toxicity, that's then going to directly affect the immune system's ability. So not only now are the invaders more attracted to us, but our line of defense is weakened. So that is just going to become a vicious cycle then of compounding. And I thought it was interesting because some of the things that you mentioned, some of these things that are, a big physical stressor is sedentary lifestyle. Yeah. And that's a big thing that's also going to directly, weaken the immune system. You also mentioned sugar. That's, can't go an episode without talking about sugar. It's my favorite thing. So not only is sugar a stressor, but sugar directly impacts your immune system, directly weakens your immune system, and actually weakens your white blood cells ability, lowers your white blood cell count, and your white blood cells are kind of, again, one of those first lines of defense that kind of attack those foreign invaders. So if you're eating a diet high in sugar, which if you listen to our breakfast bungles episode, we talked about a lot, and a lot of people are, that is, we have this weakened immune system going into it. We have this toxic environment, and now we have the exposure that we can't handle. We can't process. Our body can't fight off.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important you really, to reinforce that point about the weakened immune system. I was talking about the environment and, creating the environment for the bacteria or the virus or whatever invader starting to grow and flourish. But yeah, sugar is two-tiered in the fact that it weakens, your white blood cell count. That is scientifically proven that sugar in the system weakens, it slows down. People talk about being sluggish. It literally slows down your immune system, and really it slows down the ability. If a normal healthy white blood cell, can, let's say, attack I'm just throwing a number out there, 100 bacteria, and it can kill 100 bacteria that are just starting to flourish and grow out of control. Well, a white blood cell that is under the toxicity of too much sugar in the system may slow down and can only attack 5 or 10 bacteria. So you've drastically decreased the efficiency of one white blood cell and what they can do. Now multiply that times hundreds of thousands of millions of white blood cells across your entire system. You can see how impactful that can be on your body's ability to maintain health. Now, on the flip side of that, on the other side of that is sugar has been seen to feed cancer cells. Okay, so again, going back to this germ theory, people look at cancer cells. Well, cancer cells are our own cells in the body, but they're cells who have genetically been misprogrammed. And again, the amount of research showing the environmental impact of flipping on or off different gene sequencing, that's the whole entire field field of epigenetics. It's not, that your genes just all of a sudden turn on you. See, genes don't turn on you and start creating illness in your body because it's trying to attack itself. That's germ theory, right? And that's where, again, he gets to the heart of the quote I used at the beginning. If the germ theory of disease were true, none of us would be around to talk about it because we'd all be dead. Yeah. So this whole idea of cancer cells, our bodies are attacking ourselves. No, these are cells that have been the genetic code has been misprogrammed due to some environmental impact. And that a lot of times that environmental impact is the toxicity from from air, from food, a lot of times largely from food, from sedentary lifestyle, because we're not taking the time to stimulate that movement system, so the physical stressors. But then those cancer cells, because they're misprogrammed, they have a much higher rapid metabolism than a normal healthy cell. So, and they vibrate at a very different frequency. So because their metabolism is higher, any excess sugar that's floating around in the system, boom, that goes to the cancer cell. And because that metabolism is so high, they start dividing at a much more rapid rate. Yeah. And that is literally how a tumor grows.
And that's a perfect example of, if you just go with germ theory, which is what the medical system does, is what they're trained to do. You get cancer, we're going to fight the cancer. We're going to, the chemo, the radiation, cut it out, whatever that is. And absolutely that, saves lives. But what drives me up, I know several people, close to me that have had cancer, have survived, and I talk about, what were you taught from a lifestyle perspective? Oh, it's terrible. In fact, one, there's no education on it. Two, it's the exact opposite. So, cancer, when you're going through those treatments, you're not hungry, you don't want to eat. So they're telling, just eat anything, cake, ice cream, milkshakes. So they're not only not educating them on how sugar directly feeds and impacts cancer, they are promoting this. And I've had several people talk to me about this. And they're like, oh yeah, no, I'm allowed to eat anything. They give you a can of soda when you're sitting there having your chemo. And it's just things like that where, it's a very infuriating because we know this. We know that the sugar directly feeds those cancer cells. So if you really want the best chance possible, again, you need to fix that environment. Yeah. If you can be doing all the treatments, but if you're still dumping that toxicity into your body, you're still being a hospitable host. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. It's not to say that there's not a time and place where those things are necessary. It's about giving your body the best chance of fighting it off.
And so it's going back to the environment question. Yes. There was a reason the cancer showed up in the first place.
Exactly.
And so if you don't get to the heart of that, and again, you just go in, going back to the fly example, if I just went in and killed all the fruit flies and I didn't remove the dead fruit,
they'd be back
within the hour.
And unfortunately, we see that a lot with cancer,
the recurrence of cancers.
Yeah. Or chronic diseases in general. People who have one, it's not a coincidence that people who have diabetes also end up with heart disease or obesity, and that these things are going to autoimmune. It's not a coincidence that you see these clusters of chronic diseases, because we know it all comes back to ultimately that environment, that how everything is going on in our body. It's all going on with that, short of accidents and things like breaking bones and things like that have an external cause. But yeah, all of these chronic diseases are all internal and all the result of what we're doing on a regular basis, or what we're not doing on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately, just again, within our society, we have lost the recognition that what we talk about all the time, our bodies are designed to heal and be healthy. Okay, we have an incredible intelligence, both conscious but mostly unconscious, that our body knows exactly what to do. Our heart beats, 100,000 times a day or something. Our heart beats every second on average. Our brain is sending infinite messages through through a network of nerve communication that is communicating and coordinating every function within our body. our skin cells die off and are replaced every day.
We breathe.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you had to sit there and think, inhale, exhale?
Yeah, these podcasts would be very boring.
We'd be like, wait, sorry, I forgot to breathe. I need to think about breathing.
Yes, hopefully they're not boring, but but it'd be extra boring if we had to do that. Yeah, so there are hundreds of thousands of functions that are going on at an unconscious level that is an intelligent, harmonious, intricate communication that's happening every second of our lives, and we have lost. As a society and a culture, we have lost the recognition that our bodies are designed to be healthy. See, we believe that we're programmed to be sick, and that's just not the case. So if we can fix the reason of why, creating the ill, toxic environment of why we are sick and why we become these hospitable hosts for disease, and if we can correct that at the core, well, then our bodies naturally start to flow downstream, which is health.
Yeah, and I think, we were talking about this a lot, where I think, unfortunately, yes, modern medicine, no doubt that it's kept people alive. It's kept
emergency intervention.
Yes, there are a lot of people alive today that would not be without medical intervention. Absolutely. But I think, unfortunately, it's also taken some of that self-responsibility away. People think, if I get sick, I'll just go get an antibiotic. I'll go get whatever. I'll go to the doctor. I'll go get it taken care of. I'll go get over the counter medicine. Yeah. So it's taken off that responsibility. And, we were talking about this. I can't even remember if it was on a podcast or if we were just talking about it, but so many people don't even know what it feels like to be healthy. People have just accepted this chronic state of fatigue and sluggishness and bloatedness and sickness, and it's just they don't
normal.
They don't even know what it's normal to just drink 6 cups of coffee a day to just keep you as a minimum to keep you going. Yeah. And people just don't know what it feels like to be healthy. And unfortunately, that's, I think that's part of what's perpetuating it too, because if you don't know what you're missing, then why would you want to change if you're just used to that and you feel like that's the norm?
Yeah. And we talk about that, looking at something as simple as blood sugar, right? Your blood sugar level, again, it's not that at 120 blood sugar level was it milligrams per deciliter, right? 120, if you're there for several readings, that's when they start to actually diagnose you with diabetes. Well, at 100, that doesn't mean you're healthy.
Yeah. Or 99 versus 100, because I think it's 99 is considered okay, normal. And then 100 you're pre-diabetic. So it's what's the?
Yeah, it's not just that it's a switch that it's just on and it's off. No, it's like you're heading towards. So that's why these numbers are important to understand the background of them. And I know that's what, we help people, read and understand their blood work, whereas, their primary care. And again, it's nothing against primary care providers. I know they're so freaking busy that they don't have the time.
No, things just get marked as high or low, and you don't really get...
Yeah, and you don't get a discussion and an understanding of, well, what does this mean? And what can I do about it? Short of medication, right? Because let's say you're 99. It's like, okay, well, you're only one step out of a diagnosed diabetic situation, but there's no discussion. The discussion is we need to eat better and you need to exercise. So
okay.
Yeah, let's boil down an entire multi-billion-dollar industries into, well, eat better and exercise. Well, what the heck does that mean? And that's where it's important that we help people understand, well, what do those numbers mean and what can you do about it? So going back to the triad of the physical, biochemical, mental, emotional stressors, that's how, if we can help manage those to the best of our ability and help you adapt to them healthfully, the better, I said this in just the last episode, the better able you are to adapt to stressors, the healthier you become. And so it really comes down to not just looking at blood work numbers, but other markers, for health and well-being. If you do a true self-reported, intake on your health and well-being, that's actually been shown to, be a relatively decent reflection on whether you're healthy or not healthy. When you do a true assessment, of your health and well-being. But there's other markers that are out there that just aren't being done in a primary care office because they don't necessarily know about it, or if they know about it, they don't know what to do about it. Yeah. Heart rate variability. Is a great example. Variability, right? Adaptation. There's a very well understood marker, and heart rate variability is exactly what it says it is. HRV, okay, basically means that your heart doesn't beat, if it's 60 beats a minute, it doesn't beat every second on the 1, 2, 3. The variability becomes at, it beats at 0.9 seconds, then 1.1, then 2.05. So it's like there's a variability in how and when it's beating. Some people might say, well, the more regular it is, the healthier that should be. No, that's actually not it, because our bodies are constantly in a state of adaptation. So the more variable that your heart rate is, the healthier, the more adapted you are to your environment. And there's a way to measure that because it's a reflection of your autonomic nervous system function. Your autonomic nervous system controls and coordinates all the unconscious systems that we mentioned earlier, plus infinite more. There's a way that we look at autonomic nerve function in our office. We look at infrared thermal imaging. Temperature, like everything else in our system, is controlled and coordinated by our nervous system. So we can look at temperature variation as a way of a reflection of poor, stressed health, ill adaptation, which would be hospitable to disease, or is it adapting and healthy variation and functioning? So we look at that, we look at the range, and we look at how the body is adapting through our lifestyle choices, and especially being able to adjust to the body from a chiropractic perspective and open up that nerve system communication, and then add all the other lifestyle changes such as adding healthy exercise, good quality diet choices, which again, those are all discussions in how to create not be a hospitable host for disease, right? We don't want to be a hospitable host for disease. We want to be a thriving, fertile environment for health, right? So you're either going to be a fertile environment for disease, that's the hospitable host, which we don't want to become, or you're going to be a fertile environment for health. And by recognizing first and foremost that our bodies are designed and are geared towards health, that really is that awareness, right? You talk about awareness all the time. Yeah, I mean it comes down to that mindfulness and just really taking a true, like you said, true honest look at your life. And I think, we think a lot when it comes to our health. We think a lot about the physical and even the biochemical with the, the diet, the exercise, the limiting toxins and things like that. But I actually was giving a talk at a cancer support group recently, and one of the big things that came up, and they were 100% right, the mental, emotional, spiritual cannot be ignored. If you are under a state of chronic mental, emotional stress, I don't care if you were eating the right things. I don't care if you were exercising every day, which, to be honest, you're probably not if you're under a state of chronic mental, emotional stress. But if you don't address that, I don't care what else you're doing, you're not going to be in the best state of health. You're still going to have that toxic environment. And actually, the healthier you are, the more that you take care of those things, the more obvious it becomes when something is off. And I can tell Dr. Dan has a path. He's holding a book here. He's doing the eager student waving. Story, teacher, call me. So I'm going to let him read his passage. Story time with Dr. Dan. Now, this was out of the book Wellness and the Chiropractic Lifestyle by one of my great mentors. He was actually one of my teachers in chiropractic school, Dr. Matthew McCoy and his co-author Anthony Carino. They wrote this book, Wellness and the Chiropractic Lifestyle. But again, they do such a great job, talking about the health triad, the physical, chemical, mental, emotional. Again, they are not the only ones that write on this. I mean, it's all throughout the healthcare literature. But they do a great job doing a ton of references. And just speaking to the mental emotional side, this is in the chapter of emotional stress, one paragraph. And again, this is very well referenced, but they write, substantial evidence was found for an association between stress and increased illness behavior. And less convincing but provocative evidence was found for a similar association between stress and infectious pathology. So that literally means the more stressed from a mental emotional perspective you are, the more hospitable you are to infectious disease. Introverts, isolates, and persons lacking social skills may also be at an increased risk for both illness behaviors and pathology. You're laughing at your sister-in-law. That's right. Angela is like the complete, she's about as far right from the spectrum of introvert as you can get. She's about the biggest extrovert. I tend to fall a little bit more in the middle, but whereas my wife, who is the ultimate introvert. But anyway, introverts, isolates, and persons lacking social skills may also be at an increased risk for both illness behaviors and pathology. Other personality traits such as pessimism, hardiness, optimism, self-esteem, self-confidence, ego strength, coherence, purpose, humor, and conscientiousness all function as resistance factors. Okay? Optimism may influence physical and emotional health in such individuals by increasing the attention paid to information about health threats and risks, decreasing avoidant behavior and denial, taking better care of themselves when they are ill, and maintaining a positive mood under the thumb of a severe stressor such as illness. So, I mean, we can see, and that is very well, he has got references 245 to 268. This is on page 64. He's got reference, we're up in the 200s already. This is an extremely well referenced book. Reference numbers 245, so that's 23 references for that paragraph alone. In this, and it's not a big book, but it is just so well referenced. And again, the purpose of this was to show you that there is a massive impact with physical, mental, emotional, chemical stress on your body. So again, you're either going to become a hospitable host for disease or become a fruitful environment for health. And that's just, that's exactly
plain and simple. Can't necessarily control exposure to things, but you can absolutely control your body and how your body. Are we saying if you do everything right, you'll never get sick? No. That's, again, there will forever be things outside of our control, but you give yourself the best chance possible, and you have control over those things you do every single day. Making sure you're moving, making sure you're eating a well-balanced diet, making sure you're finding healthy stress coping mechanisms. I say healthy because there are a lot of unhealthy
coping mechanisms. Absolutely. Well, to touch on that a little bit more, because again, you went down this rabbit hole of mental, emotional stress, and again, I agree. We have some family members who are in the mental health community. Actually, are very, very good at it, but. Mental health it's not talked about. I think it's becoming, it's getting much more awareness again, especially over the last 2 years with the isolation.
People are finally realizing.
That the impact that it has on your health. And please understand that paragraph that I just read, please understand that, we're not targeting and saying like, oh, if you're an introvert, that means you're doomed for illness. No, introverts have, I think, some of the healthiest, very, full, well-rounded relationships, because again, they're not just going out into a crowd and meeting anyone. They're choosing yes, and they're developing the one-on-one, which
as opposed to me who walks into a bar full of strangers and comes out with five best friends.
Exactly. And again, neither one is wrong, but there are, we have these personality traits, and again, coming back to the recognition and knowing and owning, what your personality is, and being able to adapt adapt that in a very healthy way. And I think we always go back to the, taking care of your mental emotional health. It is not wrong, or you shouldn't consider yourself sick because you go see a therapist.
Oh no!
Like that should be, honestly, I think that should be part of a healthy regimen. Absolutely. Of a weekly or monthly basis for everyone. Again, we have technology has made so many conveniences for us, but it has also isolated us in such a way that we have lost the ability to have fruitful conversations. Have a best friend and be able to filter through that. I always talk about, I go to a men's fellowship group as often as I can every Saturday morning, and I know that they will always meet at 7 a.m. on Saturday mornings. And so I know, regardless of the time of the year, the only time they take off is if that Saturday falls on a Christmas day. But that's the only time they ever take off. So I know 52 Saturdays out of a year, I can go to a group that we are going to reflect on spiritual readings, and we are going to read meditative questions on how they are applying to our lives. Yep. That's my group therapy session.
And that's like the cancer support group I just
Absolutely.
Talked at. There's, again, it doesn't. You can find support groups for anything. You can find just a group of like-minded people. It doesn't have to necessarily be, just find something that could just be that one friend that maybe you have those good conversations with. I kind of have that one friend where literally she just called me last night because she was going through something, and we talked for a little bit. She said, I knew I'd feel better after I talked to you. I was like, all right, great. So just having that and knowing that you have that, whether it is a structured thing or having that one person or having that therapist, but it really, really does make a huge difference. And that's the difference between just being introverted just means you kind of need that time alone to regroup versus being isolated, which is so that's where you want to watch.
That's the unhealthy.
Yes, that's the unhealthy.
Correct.
But,
that's, again, and some of that stuff on the mental, emotional, that's a whole nother podcast. And again, it's a whole industry. And again, so important to incorporate that because we do tend to be a little heavy sometimes on the physical and chemical stressors.
That's our background.
Yeah, that's our
expertise. Yeah.
But the mental, emotional health is just so crucial. Essential. As the triangle, if you look at a stool, 3-tiered stool, physical, chemical, mental, emotional. If you take one of the legs out, the stool falls over. And so it's so important to really look at all three of those and address them. And hopefully we've given you some tools today to be able to, at least become more aware of it. And, and if you're looking, if anything resonated with you today and you're looking for more tools, we have so many tools on our website, Turo, Turo, familychiropractic.com. But if any of this resonated with you and you're in the Southwestern Pennsylvania region and you're just looking to actually engage, give our team a call. Reach out to us on Facebook or on our website, through our website, ToroFamilyChiropractic.com. And engage with us in terms of us helping you find the resources to truly get healthy and stay healthy. And if you're not in the area, but are looking for more resources, certainly online, we can be a resource, but we can also find you, someone in your area. We have such a network of practitioners across the country, and really it's expanding across the world of people who are like-minded and they share this sentiment of are we allowing our bodies to become toxic dumps? Are we allowing our bodies to become the host for disease, or are we creating a fertile soil for our health and well-being? So with that being said,
I always like to say, if you take care of your body, it will take care of you.
Oh, I like that.
So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you next time. Like I said, check out the website, ToroFamilyChiropractic.com for lots more information, and have a great day.
See you soon.
You've been listening to What the Health with Dr. Dan and Angela Toro, brought to you by Toro Family Chiropractic. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.whatthehealth.world.